Since we are standing on Anishinaabe land, Turtle Island, which is the nation that we live under, has
I don't live under
two-spirited
Turtle
people.
Island.
All right, well, maybe you should read a little more indigenous knowledge books.
Well, yeah, there have been all sorts of crazy, terrible ideas for a very long time, too. You're pointing to civilizations that committed human sacrifice, okay? You're saying that some ancient pagan tribe worshipped demons and therefore we need to castrate children. Physical appearance of a man. How can one know that that person really is a woman?
What is the purpose of knowing another person's sexual identity or but let me finish.
Yeah.
If it's not for the premise of reproduction, and there's
no. トランスジェンダーは伝説の部族公認の存在だから認めるべきだ。こんにちは皆さん。有田です。今回の動画なんですけど、左翼の学生とマイケル・ノーズっていう保守派の政治活動家の討論の動画ですね。頑張って翻訳しましたので一緒に見ていきましょう。ではどうぞ。
You make the statement that transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. And so I'm going to ask you a question about that. But prior to that, I want to just state that for 5,000 years BC, Gala transcribed and androgynous trans priests of Sumerian goddesses have been around and noted. 200 to 300 years before Christ in ancient Greece, there were gods worshipped by Gali priests who wore feminine attire and identified as women. Since we are standing on Anishinaabe land, Turtle Island, which is the nation that we live under, has
I don't live under Turtle
people.
Island.
All right, well, maybe you should read a little more indigenous knowledge books. Indigenous communities have used two-spirit personas for the entirety of their culture, and so that leads me to my question. When you say that transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely, I ask you, Mr. Knowles, how can we eradicate something that has been here as long as humans have?
Well, yeah, there have been all sorts of crazy, terrible ideas for a very long time, too. You're pointing to civilizations that committed human sacrifice, okay? You're saying that some ancient pagan tribe worshipped demons and therefore we need to castrate children. That's not a good argument. Yes, that's true. There were all sorts of terrible tribes. In fact, as recently as a little over 500 years ago, the Aztecs here in the Western Hemisphere 80,000 people in a sacrifice to one of the demons that they worshipped within the span of 4 days. That's not a recommendation of doing that. I don't think that we ought to consider it. Though, unfortunately, in our increasingly pagan and liberal culture, we do commit human sacrifice to the tune of 800,000 babies a year sacrificed through abortion. And it would make the Aztecs blush what we do. But that doesn't make it the right thing. You refer to a notion that is increasingly popular on the left, which is the idea of the two-spirit among various indigenous tribes. That is not real. That is a contrivance of white liberals in America. There have been various conceptions of sex and gender for all of human history, but the idea of the two-spirited indigenous intuition of some modern transsexual living in New York City who's a man who very much desires to be a woman, that is a complete fiction. You will not find that in literature dating very far back. So what does it say about the question itself? The question, regardless of what the ancient Sumerians believed before they chopped up little kids or whatever, is it true? Can a man really be a woman, and can a woman really become a man? We all know that the answer to that question is false. That's why Professor McCloskey pulled out of our debate at the last moment next week, because even a distinguished professor knows, he has the intelligence to know, even if he is transgender identifying himself, that he can't win that debate because the idea is indefensible. So the question becomes, how does one know that someone with the total physical appearance of a man, how can one know that that person really is a woman? Do you have an answer to that question?
To clarify, you're asking how can somebody know if they are a woman?
And how can I know if that person is a woman? If not by the physical attributes, their natural and enduring biological sex. What's the alternative to that?
So my response to you is then a question of, what is the purpose of knowing another person's sexual identity but let me finish.
Yeah.
If it's not for the premise of reproduction, and there's no need to relate outside of that, then I don't quite understand why we would need to question or.
So this is what happens whenever you ask a transgender activist to explain even the basic premise of the movement, is they'll immediately say, well, who cares? Why are you so obsessed with this? I'm not obsessed with this. I'm not the one who started sending men into the women's bathroom and taking away their trophies and castrating kids. I'm perfectly happy with the way things have worked for thousands of years. It is the transgender activists who are trying to upend everything. And so I think it is at least my right to ask the question, okay, what is the premise of your movement? But they always deflect from that. They always withdraw from the debate. They always try to change the subject because there is no answer. So you ask me, well, what's the purpose of, why do you even care? What's the purpose of knowing someone's biological sex? Well, for starters, because we have civil rights specifically for women in the United States. We have special bathrooms for women. We have special sports leagues for women. We have all sorts of special places and rights and privileges and that are for women that are not for men. So if now some men, people who at the very least appear to be men, are claiming a right to go into those women's bathrooms, then we either have to abolish all of the special rights and privileges that have existed for women for all of human history and are enshrined in our law, or they need to explain to me how those men are actually women. And they can't do the latter, and I'm not willing to do the former, and I don't think women across this country are willing to do the former, even if a few people have been so ideologically blinded that they would give in to this kind of an absurdity.
いやー、皆さん動画どうでしたか？今回の学生のようにネイティブアメリカンをリスペクトする人は2つの魂を持つ者の話をすることが多いようですね。日本でいういわゆるスピリチュアル系の人に結構多い印象ですね。歴史上の部族も認めていたのだからトランスジェンダーにも権利はあるべきだってすごい理論ですよね。理論的にはヒトラーが言っていたのだからユダヤ人を殲滅すべきだと活動するような白人至上主義の団体と変わらないと思うんですけど、マイコーの言っていたようにとある部族の見習いたい部分だけに注目しすぎで大量の子供たちを虚勢するっていう最低な部分には触れさえもしてなくて、ご都合主義の部分に言い表せないような気持ちの悪さを覚えましたよね。個人的にトランスジェンダーの方には否定的ではないですけど、〇〇だから権利を認めろって意味不明な理論を振りかざす活動家は僕は苦手ですね。ではここで現地の声いくつか紹介していきますね。I love how calmly and logically she shuts down her wishful thinking. She was heated, emotional, on borderline when she first asked her questions.She's been deeply brainwashed, and it shows. She humiliated herself before the debate started by wearing that hat. I love how this girl quotes in some group did it thousands of years ago and believes we need to follow that now. Human evolution at its best. She's a perfect example of what little knowledge is dangerous. This girl got absolutely humiliated. The face of somebody who thinks they are smart and on the right side of the argument, and then has that done to them.It's priceless. She just learned more in 5 minutes than her entire education. You can see her mind unraveling. No one has ever talked that clearly to her. 皆さんの考えもよかったらコメントで教えてくださいね。このチャンネル頼むぜアメリカではこういったマジかよっていう欧米ニュースを楽しく取り扱っています。チャンネル登録していただけるととっても喜びますんでよろしくお願いします。では良い一日を。